So, yes, I am here to present on Appy Hour, which is one of my most popular programs here at the Grosse Pointe Public Library. I'm going to share my screen quick so I can get to chatting about who I am. Okay, I'm thinking everybody can see this. We're just going to roll with it since you guys are minimized now. So, I do work,
Yes.
thank you, thank you. Again, my name is Alexis Smith. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am the Emerging Technologies Librarian here at Grosse Pointe Public Library. I've been in this role for about a year and a half, which is about how long I've been on the east side of the state. I actually grew up in Muskegon, Michigan, which is on the west side. West side is best side in my opinion, but I do love it over here. And I am starting to finally understand all of the different like subs of Detroit and all that good stuff. So I still consider myself new. But one of the very first things that I did here at Grosse Pointe Public Library was put together Appy Hour. You can see I have like four really, I'm sure everybody knows what these apps are: Canopy, Libby, My Library, and Hoopla. I as a patron used these for years and I absolutely loved them and I wanted to promote them. I felt like everybody could use a little bit more information on how they actually worked. But before I get into actually how or what it is, I wanted to mention how it all started. So this was born from a program that my colleague, a fellow adult services librarian, Stephanie Fazikis, ran called Tech Savvy Tuesdays. So I just kind of stole it basically. I stole Tech Savvy Tuesdays and I made Appy Hour on Wednesdays. And I developed it to meet the needs of patrons' understanding of the library's e-resources. Tech Savvy Tuesdays was amazing because she would cover things like Zoom, YouTube, just, general apps and tech that people need help with, regardless of where you are age-wise. It's impossible to know everything, but I really wanted to focus on our library e-resources and how people can really expand and understand how to use all facets of our apps. So I kept hearing during Tech Savvy Tuesdays, how do I download an app? You got to start from square one, and I totally get that. Can I stream movies for free? You sure can. Why don't I tell you about it during Appy Hour? And how do I read library books on my Kindle? If I had $1 for every time somebody has asked me that, I do think I'd be rich. So this was part of why I started Appy Hour. And I have this one more slide until I actually go into what it actually is. But in 2017, GPPL did have a strategic plan. In our mission statement, we talk about expanding learning, inspiring creativity, and connecting our community. So I took those three keywords: connect, expand, inspire, and I used that to inform how I was going to shape my Appy Hour program. It was really hard for me to figure out how I wanted to do Appy Hour. It is a weekly program, but I wasn't sure if I should do one whole class on Libby, and I could, but I didn't know if that would be too much. So even though I did start off doing that, I ended up reforming it. So I just had a 3-week class. 1 week is Connect, the next week is Expand, and the week after that is Inspire. So what is Appy Hour? As I said, it's a recurring program. Each week I highlight a different set of library apps according to the theme that I chose. So for Connect, for example, I would do the My Library app so that people can feel connected to the library, whether they're at home or, on the go. They can look up their holds, they can place holds, look up our hours, all that good stuff. And for Expand, I expand our knowledge. Okay, so now we're connected to the library. Now let's look at all the cool apps that we have. So we can read books on Hoopla or Libby. We can watch movies on Canopy. That's where I do a lot of the fun stuff. And Inspire is where I focus on our creative apps like Creative Bug, Mango Languages. That's been very popular in particular. And we used to have Brain HQ, but we no longer have that. So I'm going to have to revamp that a little bit. But Inspire is really meant to show, hey, not only do we have books that you can access through apps, we also have fun games and you can access free tutorials on how to like bake a cake or sew. Lord knows I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to sewing. So I use Creative Bug a lot. So with Appy Hour, depending on what theme I'm going on, I always include a live demo. So I will, even though I can't screencast my apps from my phone to the projector yet, I'm working on that. I do provide screenshots of literally every single screen you're going to see on the apps. Like I have my PowerPoint presentations for Appy Hour are incredibly long. Typically Appy Hour is just 1 hour and I leave a half hour for questions or for one-on-one help. This has been particularly popular. A lot of patrons really, really enjoy the one-on-one help. It's usually just me running Appy Hour, so I just try to hop over to people as quick as I can, because everybody has different devices, right? Some people come in with an iPad, some just come in with their Google phone. People bring their laptops, and how to download apps and how to use them are different according to each device. So that's what I save that time for. I also am a huge handout girl. I love handouts. And I am going to include, I'm going to email Erin a little compilation of handouts that I use during Appy Hour that can be included in the digital brochure when those are sent out afterwards. So you will get to peek at those. I'll probably show a couple of examples if I have time. And you're more than welcome to steal these. They're definitely like formatted to Grosse Pointe Public Library formatting and for promoting like our brand. But I have no problem if people steal like the language or whatever. We are all here to help each other. And yeah, Appy Hour is a space where questions are welcomed and encouraged. I originally marketed Appy Hour to anyone and everyone, and I still do. I didn't target it towards the youth. Even though I could, because we do have lots of apps and like programs for that could work for youth. I wanted to focus more on adults and older adults and teens, because we have lots of stuff that I think the teens could utilize that I don't think they do. But as I kept going on with Appy Hour, I noticed really it was just adults and older adults that would join. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it helped me tailor my own expectations to meet their needs. So here's just like a little example. Let's say you attend week 2, where I focus on expand. So this is where we will cover Libby, Hoopla, and Canopy. If you look on the little screen, I'm pointing as though you guys can see my finger. If you guys can see the screenshot, that's from my presentation directly. I also have a little screenshot of my phone where, you know, I type in Libby in the App Store, and then it's the very first one. And normally I'll have like a little red circle that I draw to indicate where people should click. I guess I forgot it on this one. But I also write down the steps as well. So like go to App Store or Play Store, search, and then download Libby. I really spell it out because it's not intuitive. If you did not grow up with technology, it's not like that is the very first step, and it's difficult. It's not intuitive. How are you supposed to just come up with this out of thin air? So that is a good example of how detailed I get in my presentations. I try not to lecture at people too much. But because my presentations are so thorough, I kind of do. Typically, though, the class sizes are small. Like usually I only have about 10 people. So when they do have questions, everybody's free to interrupt me at any time. That is so fine with me. So it does become like a conversation, but it does make me take up like the entire hour. Plus I'm a talker. I love to talk. So that of course makes time fly by. And then I of course have my handouts, which I can show you now. Can everyone see? Let me scroll up. Can everyone see my handouts, or is it not? I don't have the chat pulled up. Okay, yes.
Yes, it's visible. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So this is the document or the PDF like compilation I'm going to include and send to Erin, so you guys can peek at these afterwards. Not only am I a talker, I am a writer. And I mean that in like the longest sense. I love to include way too much information, and I'm still working on how to like cut it down. But when it comes to these apps, there's really, to me, like, I can't talk enough about them. So I try to keep it, you know, simple. But if you were to attend the Connect class, these are the main programs or apps that I talk about. So I talk about Vega, which is our catalog, Melcat, WorldCat, and then the My Library app. I show them how to access all of these on desktop as well as through their phone, which is a lot to accomplish in under an hour. But I also will include on the back side of every handout, I kind of go into a little bit more detail about what each of the apps or programs are and why it's useful for the patron. And of course, I include our tech help page, which I am going to touch on. So again, for expand, but I also include, I believe I include this during the expand portion. I print out on the Libby help page, they have a reading with Kindle little instruction, like step-by-step instructions. I just highlight that and print that out for people because it seems to be the most reliable way to get results for people. I did have to write my own step in there because again, you can never be too detailed, but this is really helpful. I do include that. I'll include other help handouts too. Like I'm telling you, these people leave, people probably think that they're coming from a college class because I'm like just giving them homework and I'm like, try this, look at this page, make sure you refer to this handout. I want them to be able to leave and feel confident that they can continue to practice these things on their own as well. And then I have a tech help general handout. I'll come back to that though. Okay, whoops. Pardon me as I go back to where I was. So the very first time that I ran Appy Hour, sorry if I'm going like super fast too. The very first round of Appy Hour, I believe I did 6 weeks of it. And I just did 1 week on like the Libby app, 1 week on My Library, 1 week on Hoopla. And I can talk about those things all day long. And people did have questions to fill in the time, but it seemed like too much. And there were so many other things I wanted to talk about, right? So I I started asking for feedback and I had surveys that I used from Project Outcome, I believe. And this is what patrons had to say. They were very complimentary. They were very supportive. Really, the one that's in all caps is the one that I get the most of is please continue. Really the only critiques the patrons had to say was that they wanted even more hands-on help. And we do offer tech appointments where we do offer one-on-one assistance for people who have in-depth tech questions. I think people don't utilize that because they think that means it has to be a question about my laptop is dying like every 20 minutes or, just something super technical. When it doesn't have to be. I have tech appointments helping people learn Hoopla all the time. That is really the primary thing. So I did, on my next iteration of Appy Hour, I did try to introduce the tech help appointments as another alternative if I didn't have time to get to them in class. But really, they just wanted more, which was really great to hear from me, from my side of things. And that's when I changed it to the Connect, Expand, Inspire, so I could kind of put everything together more. So how is this intergenerational programming, especially since I mentioned that most of my attendees are older adults or just adults, period. This is intergenerational programming because I truly believe that no matter who shows up, that we're bridging the gap of the technology, like illiteracy that we have. So I kind of did like a little graph similar to what Bruce and Monica did, or Monica did with the circles, how, there's older adults and then youth. Here I have inexperienced learners and experienced learners, and how we want to be here right in the middle. I truly believe Appy Hour is a step or a building block into that. I do think that the more patrons that come, the better they are to help each other. One time, and I don't ask people's ages when they come in. I just want to get that off the bat. I don't ask, hey, how old are you? Thanks for coming. But someone did bring up their age themselves, and they were, I think, 39. And as far as I know, that's the youngest person. As far as I know, that's the youngest person that attended my Appy Hour. But then I also get people who are in their 80s. right? And like I said, there's about 10 people who come. I get a lot of returnees. I get a lot of returned attendees. But every single session, there's at least a couple new people, if not a handful. And what's great about that is while I'm instructing or lecturing, if someone is stuck somewhere, the person next to them will help them. It's very much like being in a classroom setting. I don't have tables, but people will have their laptops or their iPads sitting in their lap, and they'll just say out loud, like, how did she get to that screen? Or where's the download button? And everyone around them will work together to help them. And I think that's really helping people come together. And a lot of different people come to Appy Hour. I have some really experienced learners who come to Appy Hour just because they want to learn what they're missing on Libby. Like a lot of people don't realize there's the sleep timer that you can on Libby and Hoopla that you can change the font sizes. You can change like the color background, that there's just all these little small things. They just want to expand their knowledge, right? But they might be good at actually downloading apps and clicking around and knowing what the menu screen looks like. So they'll help inexperienced learners how to adapt to those things. That has been probably the most rewarding part of this for me, is seeing other learners helping inexperienced learners. So I think that we're all coming to like the middle when we are in Appy Hour, where experienced learners are helping other inexperienced people as well. So benefits and quirks. I really wanted to touch on this because while of course there are a lot of benefits, there were some quirks that I'm addressing currently. And I want to get into what's coming next after this. I'm doing okay on time. So for benefits, of course, we've seen more overall app usage and awareness. And we have a lot of people coming in randomly just to ask questions at the reference desk for, like, oh, I attended that Appy Hour, but I just can't remember how to set up my Libby to send to my Kindle. And that's typically that's something we can answer on the reference desk that doesn't require a tech appointment. So we've seen a lot of reference increase as well, just any librarian on the reference desk answering questions about our apps. There's been community engagement and connections. I've had people throughout the community reach out and offer to help and volunteer their time to come visit Appy Hour and just be someone that can, come and answer questions one-on-one. Or if I'm moving too fast for someone and they are just truly not understanding how to get to the screen that I'm on, that volunteer could go and walk them through it silently or quietly while I continue my instruction. So that has been wonderful to see. I didn't even reach out to anybody in the community, and I've had people reach out to me, which has been really, really significant. Staff and patrons gain knowledge of e-resources. I wanted to put this in here because it's not just patrons that gain experience from this or knowledge of the apps and e-resources. The staff are learning too. Sometimes staff will be like, hey, what are you talking about in Appy Hour today? And I'll mention, oh, today is database day, where I talk about like all of our different databases that we have access to or that Mel grants us access to. And I can kind of inform them like, oh yeah, you didn't know that this database did this, or I just answered this question yesterday. A fellow librarian was asking me about Get Set Up, which is something that we offer. Well, I think it's for all Michiganders, I believe. And we have a page dedicated to it. And I got to inform them about all of the different like classes and tutorials that Get Set Up has. So it's been really good for patrons, but also staff as well. So that's been fun. It's also cost efficient, right? It's a sort of free way to advertise our apps and to get more usage. Patrons don't have to pay of course, to come attend. We don't require them to be library card holders to come and attend. I don't keep track of that. If it got to be like 50 plus people, maybe I would. But I don't foresee that happening. I typically cap it at 25, and I don't think I've had more than that. So it's free to everyone. Anyone can come and learn. It's just a space to learn and get your questions answered. And another benefit is we get valuable feedback. While I know that the one slide was kind of just a bunch of compliments, I have gotten valuable feedback since then. I did have one person who had really, really good critiques. I don't know if they were like a teacher or a professor or what before they retired, but they had really good critiques just on how the like presentation was set up. And it wasn't like unwelcome advice at all. It was very sweet and just really, really helpful. So I'm definitely going to implement her critiques or her suggestions. So for quirks, I've mentioned this a couple times that there's so much content, so little time. Uh, there's so many things that I want to cover that I just want patrons to know about. I sometimes like it's just fun to flash like, oh my gosh, get set up. Don't forget that you can see free yoga classes on there. You can, if you're not sure how to work your email, you can go on Get Set Up and it will walk you right through the steps, right? Like you don't have to have me personally instruct you. If you don't, maybe you don't like my teaching style, maybe you don't find my advice helpful. We have so many other resources too that can teach you. And it's so hard to figure out what I should be presenting on, what's most important to our community. So I do try to switch it up often, but that's a quirk that I'm still kind of figuring out. Another quirk is deciding on when to hold the classes, particularly when it comes to intergenerational programming, because I want really anyone from teens up to be able to attend. I've lately, in the past, what I've been doing is I've been having Appy Hour on Wednesdays, typically from 3:30 to 4:30, or 3:30 to 5, so they can have that extra half hour for questions and one-on-one help, which is a great time for adults and older adults or people who don't have like a regular 8 to 5 work schedule, but that's not doable for teens. Or at least not for all teens. A lot of them, they might get out of school at 3 or 3:30, but they have after school events. So I'm still trying to find the happy medium where I can get people more variety of ages to come. So that's a quirk that I'm still working on. No matter how much I advertise specifically what I cover in my Appy Hour classes, it's pretty hard to manage expectations. A lot of people think that this is basically their tech appointment. So and that it's okay, they're never rude or anything, but some people will come in prepared with all these questions, which is great. But they think that the whole hour and a half are just for them. They don't realize that it's a classroom size typically. I've never had anybody throw a tantrum or anything. You can just tell that they're like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting. So I have altered my descriptions. You can go on Grosse Pointe Public Library's calendar and see my previous Appy Hours to see how I like detail my descriptions. Again, I kind of throw a ton of information in there because I am a person of words and I over indulge my use of words. But I really wanted it to be clear that this is like a lecture classroom style setup with only a half an hour for one-on-one help for everyone who's in the class. So that's been a quirk. I think I've managed that now, but we will find out in future Appy Hours. The last one is burnout. Um, I put this in here because it is a weekly program. Kudos to anyone who does any sort of weekly program. Seriously, whether it's story time or a Tech Savvy Tuesday, it gets tiring. It gets tiring. And I have different content that I like to present every week so that I don't, I'm not tired of what I'm talking about. But I still get kind of, if I go over the 4-week mark, I just get burnt out and it just becomes harder for me to be as enthusiastic as I am in the beginning, right? So I usually do it for 6 weeks. I'm gonna cut it back to 4 weeks, I think. I'm still reworking it for after the summertime when people are back from their vacations. So we'll see how that goes, and hopefully that will help with burnout. I'm sure other people also experience that with any of their weekly recurring programs. It is tough business. So I wanted to touch on our tech help page. In response to some of the feedback I got from Appy Hour, I ended up building Grosse Pointe's tech page. And actually, why don't I just bring it up? I worked really, really hard on this. Am I over time? I'm doing good, right?
You're doing great. You have another 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. Okay. So here's our tech help page as it stands. It's only been live for a couple of months. I do, of course, have the need one-on-one help button right here, but I do include tutorials for all of our apps. And this is basically a link to the Niche Academy tutorials that they have, because they're like 40-second videos on how to actually download and utilize the apps, which I think are great. Then I have device and general support. We do have local assistance. We have people who will come to your house to assist you, not for downloading apps and whatnot, but for, helping you with your TVs. Like I get a lot of smart TV questions, things like that. Of course, this is kind of, you can get the gist of what this is. I also have an FAQ section. I just created this like 2 weeks ago. And I'm still implementing more as I go, but this is just the most frequently asked questions we get on the reference desk. And I just thought that this would be a good place to have like, okay, yes, you can get text alerts. Go to this page and we'll walk you right through it, right? Just for anyone who is on the tech page and is like, oh, I actually do have questions about that. They can see this and go to the proper page. Oh, gotta go through the whole thing again. Thank you. So I wanted to point out the tech help page because I did make this in response to Appy Hour, because no matter how much time I spend talking about these apps, people still have questions afterwards, or they might not remember every single step that I detail, and maybe my handouts aren't thorough enough, or they're too thorough and they like just can't even bother to look at it because there's too much on there. I did make this in a direct response to Appy Hour, so they can go here. I mention it before and after all of my Appy Hour classes, and we do try to promote it at the reference desk as well, just in case it's like, I do well with, I learn well by doing. So knowing that there's a resource like this out here would really help me as a patron, because then I can go in and be like, oh, okay, I just have to follow these steps, and if I do this a couple times, I'll have it down. So what's next for Appy Hour? Maintain the tech help website, of course. Insert FAQs. I just did that. So I can already check that off my list. Periodically update the tutorials and my own lesson plans. I really want to implement a youth Appy Hour program at some point. And it doesn't have to, it's of course not going to be as robust. I just want to point out to parents really the cool things and resources that we have for their kids. So I've been thinking about that. I don't have too much headway on that yet. I want to implement feedback from patrons. So of course, like I mentioned, the one patron who had really good critiques. I've had other patrons, say, your descriptions of what Appy Hour is are too lengthy. Like I didn't understand it. So I've cut back on those. I'm going to implement that anyway in the future. And then this is what I'm most excited for. We actually did receive the LISTA grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services this past like 2023 to 2024. And we were able to buy a lot more tech equipment. Really, we needed more hotspots. We got more Chromebooks, but we're also getting owls, meeting owls, so that you can so that we can incorporate in our hybrid programs. What else did we get? We got a couple other cool things too. And I want to incorporate tutorials for the new tech equipment that we got from this grant. I want to incorporate those into my Appy Hour and my tech help page. Not so much like I'm going to spend a whole Appy Hour talking about hotspots, but I'm going to have like a QR code that will lead them to a video that will walk them right through how to start it up or how to charge it. I love QR codes, but I really want to make a lot of like short tutorial videos on how to use our materials so that not only patrons understand, but so staff can understand how to better use them too. So that's the future of Appy Hour as I see it. And now I would love to take any questions that you have. I have, I think, 5 minutes left. So if anybody has questions, I can look in the chat too. I haven't really been monitoring that.
Yeah, the most commonly asked question was, in timing for these kind of programs, like what sort of timing would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know it's a long time, but an hour and a half is really perfect for this. I know that's a long time, but if you spend like an hour, and maybe you're more condensed with words than you are than I am. So if you can get a lecture basically done, a walkthrough of these apps or your tech services done in like a half an hour, 45 minutes, you probably don't need it to be an hour and a half, but I do. I talk. So, and so do my patrons, they love it. So an hour, I would really recommend an hour and a half. The last half hour for the one-on-one help and just answering questions has been crucial.
I think it was also a matter of like time of day, like to attract the largest crowd as well.
Yeah, yep. Okay, so that's one of my quirks, right? I haven't completely found a happy medium. I thought 3:30 to 4 or 5 would be perfect since kids and like teens are out of school by that time, but I still haven't really had any teens show up that I could tell anyway. So maybe a little later. I might try and do a 4 to 5:30, but I don't really want to go too much later than that because I don't think a lot of adults and older adults would like to make that time. But I don't know. This is an experiment. This is something I will try.
There's another question about how many per class do you typically get, like attendees, like number of attendees, please?
Sure. I normally get 10. 10 is like the most. I get like the smallest size I've ever had is 3 people, and which is great because then I can give them more one-on-one help. But usually it hovers between 8 and 10 people. Not a problem. Oh, I see someone loved I am a person of words. It is true. Oh, thanks for including the get set up link, Cheryl. That was kind. Okay. I see that 6:30 programs work for adults. That makes me happy. I'll write that down. And if anybody has any other questions that they think of afterwards, of course, I know that there's going to be the digital brochure sent out with the questions in the chat and the answers, but you can always email or call me. Email is the best way to reach me just because I'm always running around from different branches, but you can leave me a voicemail. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have. I think a monthly drop-in tech help program is a great idea. Honestly, having it just a drop-in tech help, I think just leaving that without even having specific presentations would be a good idea, especially if it's once a month. I think that's great. I might steal that because people got questions. But I would definitely recommend having more than one person running that because you can only help so many people at once, right?
So this is Aaron hopping in again. As Alexis just mentioned, if anyone, as we continue the rest of today, thinks of questions that they want to ask, feel free to just toss them in the chat because we will save them. And if they don't get answered during discussion, we can still save them and collect them for a Q&A as part of the brochure we pass out later on.